Hey, what is up guys, this is Eli. In today's tutorial we are going to make a low poly house or building inside of Cinema 4D, so stay tuned. To start off, I would like to give you a side note. I will not go into too much detail about all the basics about Cinema 4D, so if this is the first time you're using Cinema 4D, I would recommend checking out a basic tutorial so you know the basics and you can just follow along. So to start off, I would like to give you a quick tip on using the viewport camera. Many people use these small buttons on top of the viewport and they work perfectly fine, but they're a little bit small to reach and it's not very practical to use in the long run. Instead, some people use the 1, 2 and 3 keys on the numpad, but I prefer to use the Alt key on my keyboard or Option on the Mac. Just hold down the left mouse button to rotate, the middle mouse button to pan, and the right mouse button to zoom in or out. Also for this tutorial we are going to adjust some of the project settings. You can do this by hitting Command or Control and D on the keyboard, and down here at the right side of the screen you can scroll down and change the color to 80% gray. This will give our objects a default color of this gray and it's a little bit easier to work with in my opinion. It just looks better overall. Up next, I also like to adjust the display settings. So if you go up here at display, you can pick the second one, Gouache shading lines. So now when you look at the cube, you can see the lines of the edges. So you have a better view about what is going on inside of your project in the long run. So with our cube selected, let's go into this details panel again. And let's add some segments to the cube. Let's make 3 at each side and just make it 5 at the Z segments. Now when you drag and drop one of these yellow knobs, you can stretch the cube in any way you like. Let's make it something like this, a tall and slightly squeezed in cube. Alright, so up next you need to make the object editable in order to manipulate the polygons and all the edges and points. You can do this by clicking this button at the top or just hitting C on the keyboard. Now go into polygons mode and now you can select any polygon you want. We are going to select the middle row at the top. You can simply do this by clicking and holding shift. And now drag up the green arrow to raise these polygons. This will be our basic shape for the roof. Now if we zoom in, you can see a little bit of weird shading on top of the roof. This is because Cinema 4D by default kind of rounds all the edges for you. But we are working with very straight edges, so it gets a little bit weird. You can easily fix this by selecting the font tag at the side here and just deleting it. Now all the shapes will be exactly hard like we drew them. Great, so now we want to pick our live selection tool and make sure only select visible elements is checked down here. And let's drag all over our roof and hold shift if you need to add more polygons. Now you can right click and select extrude or just simply hit D on the keyboard, it's a little bit easier, and drag on top of the roof until you see it get a little bit thicker. Down here at the right you can see the number about how thick the extrusion is. Let's make it about 5 centimeters in this case. Now let's pick our move tool again by hitting E on the keyboard and click on the edges of the roof while holding shift. Pick the extrude tool again and extend by 5 centimeters again. Great, now for the last part of the roof, let's extend these sides by selecting them holding shift and then extrude them 5 centimeters again. Also let's rename our cube to building by double clicking or clicking and hitting enter. Up next we want to make a chimney for our roof. We can do this by creating a new cube and scaling it down a lot until it fits something like this. Now make the shape editable again. Select our top polygon and select the scale tool, and while holding Command or Control on the keyboard, drag the shape outwards, but make sure you're not dragging on top of the shape, just outside of the shape. With this polygon still selected, go into your move tool again and drag the upper arrow while holding the Command or Control key again. Now on the keyboard we can press the I key for inner extrusion or just right click and select inner extrusion and drag the shape inwards And now with the Command or Control key selected again, let's drag the shape inwards. Also, let's rename this to chimney. For the next step, we want to make some kind of edges at the sides of the building. To do this, start by clicking on the building and select the edge mode. Now when we press K on our keyboard, a small tooltip pops up, and let's select the loop or path cut by hitting L. Now when you hover on an edge, you can see the shape kind of transitions when you move to the upper part of the screen. This is because it automatically calculates something in between of the two edges. To fix this, we can select the offset mode and set it to edge distance. Now you can see it just behaves like we want it to. Click somewhere around about here and you can see at the side the distance is somewhere near 10 centimeters and we want it to be 10 centimeters. And let's do the same with this one as well. So now back into our polygons mode, let's hit U and then L on the keyboard to select the loop selection tool. And now we can select a whole ring around the building with these polygons. Hold Shift to select the second ring. And now on the keyboard press D to select the extrude tool again and drag outwards about 5 centimeters again. Now we're going to add some windows to our building, very necessary of course. To do this, create a new cube and scale it down, roughly position it at the side of the building and scale it until it looks something like a window. And just duplicate the shape while holding Ctrl or Command on the keyboard and dragging upwards. Now duplicate again and rotate the shape so we can add 2 more windows at this side. For the upper portion of the building we are going to add different windows. But first we're going to make the indents on the building where these placeholder windows are right now. So up here, click and hold and you can select bool. Basically this is like in Illustrator where 2 shapes overlap each other and they intersect. So now select the building and drag it inside of this bool object. You'll see it gets a child of the bool parent. And now select all the cubes and drag them in as well. And you'll see nothing really happened. This is because a bool only intersects between 2 objects, but there are 5 inside right now. So now we need to select all the cubes and group them. You can simply do this by pressing Alt and G, not Command and G, Alt and G. Now make sure the building is at the top of the hierarchy and you'll see it cuts out perfectly. Up next, let's open this group again with the windows and select one cube. We're going to duplicate this, so copy and paste it. Make sure it's outside of the bool. And we're going to use this to make some shapes around the windows. So scale it down, squeeze it down, and make it a little bit wider so it kind of looks like a windowsill. Duplicate it, rotate it. Duplicate it to the top again. So for the upper portion of the building we want to create different windows. We want to make windows with a round top. To do this, go into this menu and select the rectangle. And now we want to change views so we can have an exact view of the side of this rectangle. To do this, go up here at this little icon or hit the middle mouse button. And let's go into the front mode. Make sure the object is editable. Select the point mode. Now when we right click on top of the edge at the top, we can select create point. So let's zoom in a little bit and click right inside of the middle of this edge. Now with the move tool we can drag it up and right click again and select soft interpolation. This rounds this point. Now with these black knobs we can just drag these outwards. Try to stay horizontal when doing this and keep adjusting until you're satisfied. Now scale this down until it fits some of our previous windows. And let's go back into our perspective mode. You can see the shape is not filled, it's just a couple of lines. To make this a real solid shape, we need to extrude these lines. You can do this by selecting extrude up here and dragging the rectangle inside of the extrude object. When we select the extrude object, we can go into the object properties and we see the extrusion is at the right side right now. So let's rotate the shape and put it right at the top of the building. Duplicate it for a second window and let's just add them inside of this group of the bool. Great, so this is the basic shape of our building already. Now let's move on and go to the bottom of the building. Make sure the building is selected. Go into polygon mode and select all the bottom polygons. And let's extrude these a little bit, like 20 centimeters. This can be done easily by holding shift. When you hold shift, everything goes in increments of 10 centimeters. Now press U and L on the keyboard again to select the loop selection tool. And let's select this ring of polygons. With the extrude tool, we can extend these again by 5 centimeters. Alright, up next we want to add a hole for our door. It looks good when it also has a round top. So let's just pick one of these previous extrusions and duplicate it to the bottom. And now you can scale it up so it looks more like a door instead of a window. When you're not satisfied about the shape, you can select the rectangle and go into point mode and adjust according to your needs. Also, we want to add some kind of attic windows. So let's start off with a round one at the side. You can do this by creating a cylinder, rotate and scale it until it fits something like this, and just drag it inside of the windows inside of the bool. Now for a window that sticks outside of the roof, let's select one of these rounded extrusions, copy and paste it so it's outside of the bool, and drag it up. Now let's make it less tall so it kind of looks realistic. And change the extrusion so it totally sinks inside of the roof. To make further adjustments on this window, we need to make it editable again by hitting this button or pressing C on the keyboard. And now go inside of this group and select the front cap. When you're into the polygon mode, you can make an inner extrusion again. And then drag in the shape a little bit while holding Ctrl or Command, so it gets a little bit of an indent. Now you see a little bit of glitchy shading going on here. This can be fixed by deleting the font tag again. So keep this as a reminder. If there is some kind of weird shading going on, you might need to delete the font tag. Now select the main extrusion again. Let's pick our live selection tool again and just drag over the top of the window and extrude it again so we get a little bit of a roof feeling. Also select these sides and extrude these as well so we have an overhang. Now we want to select the front of this roof. Also, if you see you selected too much of it, you can simply hold Command or Control on the keyboard and select the polygon that isn't necessary to be selected. Now extrude this shape so we have an overhang. As a next step, it would be nice to add some gutters on the roof. To do this, let's create a tube shape and scale and rotate it until it would fit under the roof. Now select the tube and go into the slice tab and just select slice. You can see the tube is now sliced in half. It's not starting and ending at the right point. Let's make it from 90 to 270 degrees. Great, now for the drain part, we can just pick a regular cylinder and just make it really thin. Now position it until it fits. Don't really worry about the length, we can adjust this later. And now let's make this object editable again. Now zoom in at the bottom portion of the cylinder and let's select all the bottom polygons. Let's extrude these Move this a little bit forward and rotate these and repeat, so we get a little bit of a curve at the end of the drain. Now right here we can see the objects are overlapping. This is obviously not something we want. So let's hit K and L again for the loop cut tool. And just make a cut right on top of the overlapping part. Now go into our move tool and select this ring with the U and L key for the loop selection tool. Make sure you are in the edge mode. You might need to zoom in a little bit to select this and just drag this ring outwards. You can also reposition this a little bit so it looks more wonky. It gives the building a little bit more of character. Now repeat this step on the other overlapping parts. Now you can see the gutter ends are still open, so this wouldn't work in real life. So to fix this we can delete the second gutter we made, so we can fix this and then duplicate it again. So with this one, duplicate it, then scale it down horizontally. And move it right to the side. And now when we change the inner radius to 0, we can make it a full shape again. Duplicate this to the other side of the gutter and then duplicate the whole gutter to the other side of the building. It might also be a good time to rename our objects that haven't been renamed already. So this is starting to look like something. So when we look down here, we can see a door, but no steps to reach the door. So let's make those steps. Start off by selecting the building and go into polygon mode. Select this middle polygon at the front and scale it up horizontally so it's wider than the actual door. We want to separate this polygon into 3 equal polygons. This can be done by right-clicking and selecting the loop or path cut. Make sure restrict to selection is selected. And now just click somewhere inside of this polygon. And then down here you can change the number of cuts to 2. So that adds up to 3 separate polygons divided by 2 edges or cuts. So now when you deselect everything, you can see the cuts only reached inside of this single polygon because we checked that check mark. So let's select these 3 polygons and extrude them while holding shift, so it's just 10 centimeters. Then select the bottom 2 polygons and extrude these 10 centimeters. And finally only the bottom one. So these are our stairs. Now these look a little bit lost, so let's make some sides for these staircases. Just create a new cube and rescale it until it looks something like this. Make the cube editable and go inside of the edge mode. Then select this edge. Now you can see the edge axes are kind of in a weird rotation. You can fix this by resetting the axis rotation. To do this, go up here and select Enable Axis. And then down in these fields you can see the rotation values of this axis. Let's put zeros instead and hit Apply, and now the axes are perfectly straight. Make sure you deselect the Enable Axis mode. And now you can move the axes like we want them to. You might need to repeat this on the other side, so you can make nice sides for a staircase. When you're done, duplicate the shape at the other side and you're completely done. Next up, let's add some kind of balconies on the top windows. Let's start off with a disc. Roughly position it on the center of the window's edge and make sure it kind of overlaps the sides. Down here, let's add some more rotation segments. Something around 53 would be a good option. Just make sure it's not an even number. Also, let's add some disc segments so the outer ring has some kind of square shapes. Let's make this disc editable and go into our polygon mode, and let's select every other polygon starting from the walls. With these selected, just extrude these upwards. Or no, let's undo this, and before we are going to extrude these, let's duplicate our object and then go to the bottom one and extrude them. Now let's take a look at the bottom of the balcony and select our second object we just duplicated. Make sure all the polygons are selected. Now we can extrude these to make the bottom a little bit thicker. Now let's duplicate this whole shape on its own and drag it upwards And we might need to rotate it to make it look like a filled shape. Now get a little bit of a look at the top. We need to delete the whole center of this balcony part. So select all the unnecessary polygons and just delete them. Now let's group these and duplicate them to the other window. So that is basically it for this part of the building. For the next part, which is the shop at the side, I will be going a little bit faster because it's mostly the same techniques, so bear with me when I'm going a little bit fast. I start off with creating a new cube and roughly scaling it until it fits the kind of dimensions of the previous building. Also make sure there are 2 segments at each side, just to make things a little bit easier. And now when the object is editable, select the upper edges and drag them upwards to make a slanted roof. Make sure the font tag is deleted. In the polygons mode, select the upper portion of the roof, extrude these, do the same on the sides. Here at the front, I want to make a window and a door. Let's raise these edges a little bit so we have more room to work with these polygons. Select the right one and duplicate it with the scale tool so it's just as wide as the door would be. Selecting the upper edge, we need to reset the axis again, and now we can move it down like we wanted to. Let's make it a little bit wider. Select the polygon, drag it inwards, duplicate with the scale tool again, and also drag this inwards so we have a little bit of an indent like there are 2 doors. For a doorknob, select this polygon and inner extrude it. Let's scale it down a little bit and just place it to this side of the door and then extrude it outwards so it's a little bit thicker. At this side of the front we want to have a nice big window, so make an inner extrusion again, extrude it inward, and then for the window sill select this bottom polygon, extrude it just a little bit, and then select this newly created polygon and drag it outwards, so now we have a nice little windowsill. Up next, let's add some kind of sign above the window. Also duplicate the shape to make some second sign we can put above the door. And we want to add some kind of text on top of this. We can simply do this by clicking here and selecting text. Inside of the object properties we can manually add the words we want to show. In this case I'll go for flowers. Let's scale it and position it until it fits the sign. We can see the sign is a little bit wider than our text, so let's go into the horizontal spacing here and let's stretch the text a little bit. Once again we can see the text is just a bunch of lines and not a real shape, so we need to extrude it again. Make sure you're extruding at the right side. Now duplicate this and position it on the other side, and we might need to reduce the letter spacing again. It would also be nice to have some kind of lamp at the side of this building, so to do this I create a cone and a cylinder. Let's drag these upwards so we can focus on these. I just rescale everything until it kind of fits like a lamp. Remove the caps of the cone. We don't need these. And also duplicate the cylinder, make it editable. And let's do this trick we did on the drain by extruding, rotating and moving slices we just created. Group these and name it a lamp. And now we can scale it down and position it where we want it to. Also let's make some room for some plants by starting with a cube with an inner extrusion and make it sink inside of the building so it feels like it's connected to the walls. Then make a second cube again, make it really small. This will be the base for our bushes. Make the object editable again. Scale down the top polygon a little bit and then extrude it again. Drag it over a little bit to the left in this case. Make some more extrusions that will serve like branches. And now on top of this let's add a tall cube. And in the object properties let's select fillet or fillet if you want to act French. And add a bunch of segments to the cube so we can easily manipulate the shape of this. Now here comes a fun part. When we make the object editable again and select the polygons mode, right click and select the brush. Make sure it's not too big. You can resize this by holding the middle mouse button and dragging. And now you can drag and drop to reshape the bushes. Now duplicate these and rotate them a little bit to make a little bit of variation in the view. Also let's add a cube down here at the entrance to make it look a little bit more inviting. And now we're really finishing things up. So let's add some more details by duplicating some of these window sills and dragging them up here like it's a window frame. You might want to do this at this round window as well. And finally up here at the attic window. So that's basically our building. As you can notice, there is no floor for our building. So let's make something for this. We are going to use a cylinder for this. Make it really large. And down here at the object properties, select the caps tab and select fillet. Adjust the radius until you're satisfied. Something about 8 centimeters looks fine. And then go into the top view so you can perfectly center it with the building. Then make sure it kind of connects with the actual building, so it's not floating. And this is our final model. Now if we click on the render button, it doesn't look very pleasing at all. But don't worry, this can easily be fixed. Up here we can hit Edit Render Settings and click on the Effect button. We get a whole list of effects, but we just want the first one, Ambient Occlusion. This is something you'll use in mostly every project that needs to look a little bit realistic. You don't need to fiddle around with these settings, just go outside of this window and hit Render again and you can see nice shading. To enhance this look, let's add a light source. The best one for beginners is the physical sky inside of Cinema 4D. When you render, you can see something is happening. It's like the sun is shining, but not something that looks pleasing right now out of the box. To fix this, go inside of time and location, and now you can start playing around. Personally, I am a big fan of using the month May. For this project, let's set the time to something about 90 hours, 45 minutes, something about that. Let's render this, and you'll see everything is orange. We don't want this, but this is happening because the only light source right now is the sun, and the sun at this time of the day only sheds some kind of orange light, obviously. But it's not bouncing off clouds, it's not bouncing off anything. A trick I usually like to apply to a project using physical sky is adding a second manual light, which we can manipulate more easily. And you can do this by clicking on this light bulb and selecting area light. Now when we rotate the camera, we can see the light source of the physical sky where the sun is. And let's drag the area light somewhat in front of this, so the light comes from the same direction. And let's make the color some kind of orange as well. Now down here, make sure the shadow is set to area. This is somewhat the most realistic shadow option, but also one of the slower ones. And now when we hit render, we can see it adds a little bit more of a dimension to the whole building. The details pop out a little bit more. Now we want to get rid of this orange look to it. We can fix this by adding a white light. So click on this light bulb to create a regular light. Make sure it's an omni light. Keep the shadow to none. And then down here is the magic button, Ambient Illumination. When you click this, it will light the whole scene on its own, regardless of the position of your light bulb. You can instantly see everything turns more white. But now it would be too bright. So let's turn down the intensity to something like 80 or 83. And hit render. And now you can see the original colors of the object are coming back to life. Now let's not forget the lamp at the side of the building. We also need some kind of light source for this one. And we can do this with a spotlight. When you create this, you can already see in what direction the spot would cast light. So let's rotate it and put it in place. and drag the bottom circle a little bit upwards because it doesn't need to extend all the way down there. You can also resize the radius of the fall off. Now in the light properties, let's make it a little bit of a warmer tone. Because most light isn't really white, make sure the shadow is set to area. And then the second option is to set the visibility to volumetric. This will make sure you can see some kind of haze around the light. So when we render this, you can see the light falling off. So this is basically our lighting. Feel free to adjust this to anything you like. It's really up to you what you like. Next up, let's make sure we have some kind of nice composition, a nice angle we're viewing the building. We can do this by creating a camera up here. Make sure you're selecting this little black square so it turns white. And now in the object properties, change the focal length to 200. This is some kind of trick where you zoom in so much that the perspective is kind of crunched together. It's basically the opposite of a fisheye lens, where everything looks really tall and big, and this makes it look like a miniature building. So when you're satisfied with the position, we might want to lock the camera position, so we don't accidentally move it around when we're working on the project itself. To do this, right click on the camera and go into the Cinema 4D tags and select the protection tag. Now you can't move the camera again until you delete this tag. So now as a finishing touch, we can add some colors and textures to our model to make it look like a finalized project. To create a color or material to put on top of an object, you can simply double click down here in this field. Double click to open it, and most of the times for this kind of low poly style we can deselect the reflectance because it makes everything look really plasticky and cheap. We just want to have some nice pure colors. So when we click on color, we can adjust the color. And for the walls, we're going to make some kind of off-white, kind of beige tint. You can drag and drop this on top of the building object and also on top of the second building. Now for the window sills and all these edges around the building, we want to have something a little bit brighter. So let's create a new color and make it some lighter beige or almost gray look. And select our building and pick the polygon mode. And with the loop selection tool, we can select all the polygons we want to give this color. Once we selected what we want, you can simply drag and drop the colors on top of it. Let's also add this color on the chimney and all the windowsill details. It's easier to put it on top of the group. Now you might have noticed we have some kind of weird gradient in the back. This is the physical sky we are seeing. We want to hide this, so select the physical sky and right click and go into Cinema 4D tags and select the compositing tag. And down here we can uncheck scene by camera, and now it's completely gone. We will replace this by a background we manually selected and created. For the roof, we want to have some kind of really dark brownish color. Select all the polygons we need to color and apply the material. Do the same thing with the second building. Now down here at the side, we want to add the accents color to the cube and then create a new material for the dirt that is inside of the cube. This will be some kind of really dark brown color, something that looks like dirt. To give a little bit more character to this material, we can add a texture to this, which is noise, and set the mix mode to multiply. And we might want to make the noise really thin so it doesn't look like big chunks. So click on this image and set the global scale to something like 3%. It's really small. Now select the polygon, which will be the dirt, and drag the material on top of it. Next up is another kind of brown for the branches. and some kind of green you like for the bushes itself. For the lamp material, we are not going to deselect the reflectance. Just add some kind of rusty gold look to it, maybe bronze. Up here at the front, let's make these letters red to make them stand out a little bit. For all the metal parts, we are also keeping the reflectance channel checked and make the color some kind of gray, of course. Apply them to the gutter, the drain, the balcony, everything that's metal. Also make sure the attic roof is also red. In this case I forgot to make the rest of the shape this kind of off beige. So let's drag this material on top of it, but you can see it overrides all the other materials. If you look at the side, you can see this material is set at the last position in the row. Just drag and drop it in front of all the other materials, so the hierarchy is restored again. So when we render, we can see it's starting to look like something. But the background is pure black and it doesn't really fit in the whole scene. So let's create a new background. You can do this right here. And create a new material for this. Let's add a texture to it, which will be a gradient. Click on the image of the gradient and set the type to 2D circular. Let's make it from white to something slightly gray. And set the mode to multiply. Now set the main color to something beige yellow. And apply it to the background. And it doesn't really look that nice, so let's play around with the mix mode. Let's just keep it at normal and set the mix strength to something about 40. That looks kind of nicer. Maybe add a little bit more of contrast to the gradient. Now for the windows, we need to add a special material that looks kind of transparent, kind of reflective, but doesn't really make it see-through because we have no objects inside of our building. So start off with creating a new material, setting the color to some kind of medium dark gray, and go into a reflectance channel. Up here, click on the Add button and add a Beckman reflection. Now check transparency. And here at refraction, put 2.2. This makes it look kind of like glass. And also reduce the brightness so it's less see-through. Apply this material on the extrusions and all the window parts. Except for the attic ones, because we want to make them look a little bit more dark. For those, let's duplicate this glassy material and make the color a little bit more bright and bluish. And reduce the brightness of the transparency so it's less see-through. Then apply the material to these upper windows. Also apply that same material to the bottom window of the shop and the doors. For the door handle, we can reuse the same material we used for the drain and all the metal objects. So that's basically it. Now it's just up to you to fine-tune everything you want, the lighting, the camera position and the colors, until it looks good to your taste. I have one final bonus trick for you. If you select all the objects that create this building and group them together, you can go up here and select any of these, but let's take taper and drag them inside of the group. And now when we resize this purple frame so it fits around our building and adjust the strength, you can see it gets kind of inflated or deflated, like you can see in cartoons. So this might be a nice little detail to make it a little bit more cartoony or playful if you like that. So that is it for this kind of lengthy tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you learned a lot, and with all the techniques we learned today, you can make all kinds of buildings, create cities, all kinds of creative things with this kind of simple and low poly style. If you have any kind of comments or questions about this video, just put them down below. Leave a like if you like this video, and I'll catch you next time.